Hello, and welcome to Opinions Anonymous. I, of course, am Luke, and I have a great episode in store for you today. So, today is November 30th, last day of November, last day before December. And December always comes with, of course, Christmas and all of the holiday cheers or jeers, depending on your view of it. But one of my favorite things about Christmas growing up was we always got advent calendars. And my aunt dropped off three advent calendars for the boys. So two of them are the traditional chocolate advent calendar, which I had as a child. 24 days, you open it up. I think every year the chocolate got smaller, or so it seemed. Kind of like everything. It starts off, you get 24 large pieces of chocolate on your way to Christmas, and now it's like 24 chocolate chips and Merry Christmas, right? But she got one of each of those for the boys, and then a Disney Advent calendar of books, which will be interesting. I don't know how long these books are. I haven't opened them yet. I showed the boys, but tomorrow we will. They'll each get a piece of chocolate, and we'll read a book. So I think that's pretty cool. But lots of fun Christmas traditions for the month of December, and maybe a few more of those leading up here in the coming weeks. But also in the coming weeks, I have a story that I'm going to share, or a collection of stories, probably on not only how I got to where I am today, but also how the podcast got to where it is today. So the podcast, appreciate everybody watching, appreciate everyone listening. But how did we get to where we are today? So the podcast today, as you know it, is mostly Andy, Kyle, other Luke, and myself. Not hasn't always been the case, but that's primarily what you're used to today. Starting way back, only because it's relevant for a member of the podcast. But my first job ever was babysitting, and I think the first person I ever babysat was my cousin Eric. And then I watched him for maybe a year, and then Kyle's mom reached out and she's like, "Hey, do you mind watching Kyle too?" So I actually babysat Kyle and our other cousin Eric, and that was my first job ever. So it's funny, Kyle, Andy, Luke, and a couple other guys came over the other weekend, and we were talking about how friendships oftentimes come in, ups and downs. And it was interesting because Kyle and I would be at every holiday event together, every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, and we would say hey or whatever. But Kyle would talk to a separate group. So I am, I think, 3 years older than Kyle, but he would talk to a group of friends, or a group of family, I should say, family and friends, and I would kind of talk to another group. Maybe the age cutoff, maybe just who he was hanging out with. Some of them went to college with him, but just funny enough, Kyle and I never talked all that much. And now we talk quite often. Very similar story to Andy, who growing up, Andy and I lived, I don't know, a mile, maybe less than a mile apart. And we would ride bikes to each other's houses. I would take my scooter and ride down there. But I was hanging out with Andy's older brother, Steve, who was 2 years older than me, I think. But Andy is maybe the same age as Kyle, like 3 years younger. So at the time, Andy was always around us, but I was hanging out with Steve and then their older brother, Nick, a little bit. And now, actually, not this past time, but a few times ago, Andy's younger brother, Joe, actually came over and played werewolf with us and all that. So funny how things work, but, would see them all the time. And then, don't see them for quite a while. And I hadn't talked to Andy for quite some time. He would be, at a party that I was at once in a while, based on some pictures I just found recently from, I don't know, 2010, maybe 2007. I don't know. But we would not see each other for quite a while. And then this happens. And now, again, we talk all the time. And Andy's one of my dearest friends. So a little bit of that mixed in, and that's kind of the podcast part. But my first job ever, babysitting Kyle, and who would have thought we'd be where we are today? So if babysitting Kyle was my first job, my second job was definitely working at Stewart Seeds. I started there, I think, when I was 13, and around here, Stewart Seeds is a very common term because I feel like everyone worked there. But what Stewart Seeds was a seed company, and the number one job that they employed every underage kid would be detasseling corn. So you walk through, you pull the corn tassels. We're in a very rural community, and that's what everybody did. And it was a horrible job. Nobody wanted the job. Nobody liked the job. Before detasseling season, there was a season called roguing, which I think is just where you cut down like the large corn that didn't belong, maybe. I don't know. That was also very popular. But me, I'm always one step ahead of everybody. And I actually got put in the research team. So the research team was only, I don't know, 10 people maybe. You made a quarter more an hour. So I was starting way on top. But my uncle was the head of the research department. So I kind of had an in. All right. So all my friends were roguing, and I was working in research, which was, I don't know if it was any better work or less work or more important work. I really don't know. But what it was for me, low key, I've always kind of just been an anxious person. I don't know why, maybe more on that later. But the research team seemed to calm me down a little bit. It wasn't roguing with a bunch of people I knew that something could go wrong and they could judge me. I didn't really know anybody in the research team. So I had to make new friends, which is great. And started working at Stewart's. We would detassel a little bit or help rogue or detassel like later in the year. But honestly, I think the research team, the roguers and detasselers did not like us. And I think it was because their job sucked. And ours wasn't that bad. We would go when the corn was smaller and we would thin the plot, which is what they called it, which we would make sure that there was exactly 30 corn stalks in a row. If there were 31, we would cut one out. If there was a huge corn stalk and the rest were just the same size, we would maybe cut that one out. So we were doing research or prepping for research to make sure that the corn is all the same to where they could do comparisons. I think I could be making that up completely. I don't know. But I was on the research team and it was great. My parents both worked there, I think, at the time. So they would take me every morning and then I would leave with them in the evenings and it was fine. But, it's not a prestigious job, not something I wanted to do every day. And some of my friends worked at a restaurant in Greensburg called A&W. And one of them was like, hey, I can probably get you a job. And I said, that sounds great. To date, I think this is still the only job that I showed up that day wearing cargo shorts and a t-shirt, did an interview, which consisted of, what's your name? Do you do drugs? I don't even know if they asked that question actually, because maybe we'll get to more of that later, or maybe we won't incriminate anybody, but it was like, can you start tonight? And I don't think I did. I don't think I started that night, but I went to the interview and they basically said, hey, can you start the shift right now? And I was just like, I'm not really prepared for that. But at the time I had incredibly long hair. So this is A&W, a restaurant. And I started there and it was nice to drive to a job. I had my license to make more money during the school year. Stewart Seeds was just a summer job, so this allowed me to make money during the year. And I met a lot of really great people. And the A&W was crazy, and it's kind of where a lot of things started. And I know you're saying, what's this have to do with the podcast? But I'm going to get there. When I started at A&W, when you start, you are the chicken boy. That's what they call you, the chicken boy. And what you do is you fry chicken. So A&W is known, of course, for several things, but one of it is fried chicken. So the chicken comes in, you season it yourself, you bag it up yourself. So that usually happens on day shift versus night shift. Day shift was the restaurant opened at 10, but day shift, and I'll kind of get to that in a moment, but it was 8:30 to 4, and then from 4 to 10 was night shift. So day shift got everything ready, did the chicken, did a lot of stuff in the morning when it was slower, between the hours of 8:30 and 10, mostly 9 and 10. And then the restaurant opens and it becomes very busy. It was a very busy place back then. And I learned a ton working at A&W. So I started off, I was chicken boy. So you start off, and basically the first night you get covered in grease, covered in flour, grease burns on your arms. I had so many scars on my arms, or grease burns every night when I left. And at the end of the night, you were exhausted because you're busy nonstop. So I go in first night. I think I worked with a couple seasoned people, one of them being Craig Story. Maybe now if you're following the podcast, you realize where this is going. And I believe he told me when I first walked in, he said, shit, you should turn around and leave now. And I didn't know the guy at all. I did not know him whatsoever. He went to Greensburg. I went to North, laughed it off. And then I think Randy, who could be in a ton of stories as well, was in there. So got paired with two seasoned vets, two people that were really good at what they do. So there are 3 roles for the cooks, and the cooks, predominantly males. The 3 roles were chicken, which is what I was doing when I started, fryers, and grill. So that's how we staffed things. That's how it was always staffed for the majority of the time I was there. And you just go, it's crazy. So they would take an order, they'd call over the microphone, 10-piece chicken. And so I would grab a bag of chicken that was pre-bagged into 10 pieces, put it into the flour, mix it all up. You get flour all over you. I wore an apron for quite a while. Then you don't wear an apron, but flour all over you. Put it in the grease. Grease splatters you. You get grease all over the place. And then you turn around and write on a whiteboard when the chicken will be ready. So all the chicken takes 15 minutes. So we would there were 3 fryers, 3, 4, and 5. And you would put 3 left, right. So 3L, 10-piece, 545. And then you would know, and that was kind of your check. So in the meantime, trust me, in that 15 minutes, there would be several more called out. So another 10-piece. So maybe you'd put it in, if that was 3L, you put it in 3R or 4L. Or maybe somebody ordered 3 10-pieces, so you would need to use both of them. So it's 5 left and right. So it was high paced. And then in the meantime, people are ordering cheeseburgers, hamburgers, they're ordering fish fillets, tenderloins, French fries. So everybody's kind of busy, but there's enough downtime to where you start building some camaraderie. The girls are in the back, in the front, getting drinks. But when things slowed down is where it really got crazy. So Friday night, everybody's going to the football games, except for us, we're working. Maybe it's really, really busy through about 7:30. And then maybe it's 8, maybe it's 8:30 in the summer. But then things slow down, and that's where the fun really happened. And I have a million stories about A&W. I'll share some of them with you, but there were the initiation pranks, and maybe not like other things. I mean, we had industrial, I say industrial, but there were sprayers for the dishes. The most popular initiation joke, and even for veterans, you would take the sprayer and rig it up in the corner, and turn the water off. So you'd rig it up to where the sprayer button is pressed, or the clasp is ready to spray. And the next person that goes back there and turns on the sink, the sprayer would just spray them right in the face every time. And it was if you worked at A&W and you say you did not get caught with the sprayer trick, you're lying, because I got caught. Everybody got caught with it. Sometimes you would put it up there, you'd forget, you go to wash your hands, and it would spray you. And that happened several times. There was times where, and you needed a comedic break once in a while. It was busy. It's not saying it was hard work, but it was busy work. You're trying to keep everybody happy. And I think for a long time, we did a damn good job of keeping people happy. They'd come in, order their food. They wouldn't have to wait a long time. We were efficient. It's not like we were dropping food on the ground. It's not like Waiting, the movie with Dane Cook. We were really professional, but we had so much fun. There were times where, you gather the garbage, you throw it in the back, and then when you had time, you took it out, right? So you didn't do it right then if you were in the middle of a rush. And one time, a guy named Jake was there, and he climbed into a trash bag. So there was just, a couple trash bags in the back, and he climbed into one and scared another coworker, and it was hilarious. A ton of those stories, but a couple that I will get into. A&W, famous for chicken. I started as a chicken boy. Also famous for root beer. And I don't know if you know this, but A&W makes their own root beer. The one at Greensburg does. And they also make their own coleslaw, which is pretty interesting. Those are the two recipes people try to get out of you, and chicken, of course. I just told everybody the recipes. Maybe I'll tell you one day. But root beer, make your own root beer. And to make your own root beer was a 3-day process. Which might sound crazy, but I'm probably going to get these measurements wrong because it's been so long since I worked there, but there was a 40-gallon drum that we made this in, a legit metal drum. There was a metal ore that you used to stir it. So you filled the drum up with 20 gallons of water, and then you put I'm almost positive, 20-pound bags of sugar in there. So 60 pounds of sugar. If you like A&W root beer, you may never drink it again. 60 pounds of root beer, 60 pounds of sugar, and then you would stir it. And this is what took so long. So this is why it took 3 days, because you would maybe make it one night. You come in the morning and that sugar is all settled at the bottom. So you have to stir it again. And every 3-4 hours, you would need to stir it again because the sugar started to settle. So after 2.5, 3 days, depending on how often you stirred it, the sugar was all in the water. So then you would add the syrup. So you would have 3 gallons of root beer syrup into the jug, and you would stir all of that together. So at this point, it is just water, sugar, and root beer syrup, and that's all it was. And then you added CO2, obviously, when you hooked it to the CO2. But we had these metal canisters that probably fit 3 to 5 gallons, maybe, of root beer, probably 5 gallons. I'm going to say 5 gallons of root beer. And we would take them. You would have to clean them out. They were horrible to clean. They were a pain. You would clean them out, take them back there, fill them up. And they told you from the start, when you're filling them up, stay there. You have to stay there and watch it, because if something happens, you're filling it out of this huge drum. You flip the nozzle forward, it comes out, the syrup comes out, and you're spraying it down into these canisters. Stay back there, stay back there, stay back there. I had probably only been at work for 3 months on a busy Friday night. And Craig went back there to fill one up, and he's like, they're so busy up there. We have to fill it. We need root beer. So he starts filling it. He comes up and he starts helping out. And then finally things start to calm down. It's not quite as busy. So he goes back there. Well, he didn't realize that an hour had passed. So the entire barrel, it was a full 40 gallons of root beer, was on the floor in the back room. And this is at 9:30, 9:45 at night, close at 10. This is probably a 2-hour cleanup job. He comes back up and he is like, fuck, left the root beer on. And we're like, oh, no, this is the first time I'd ever seen it happen. So go back there, and there's like an inch or two of root beer just covering the entire floor. And the owners are very upset because this is a lot of money. Think about it. This is 60 pounds of sugar. This is 3 gallons of root beer concentrate. And this is, at this point, 3-4 days worth of work to create this. So they are very upset, very mad. Craig is laughing probably, and also mad because now he has to stay until 11 o'clock and clean it up. But not only did Craig do that once, but he did it twice in the tenure that I was there. I don't know if the owners were more mad the second time that he had done it again, but I do know that every time he did that, I mean, it's a mess. It's almost impossible to clean up, which is why it takes so long. So a good story there with the root beer. So eventually I got moved up to manager and got moved to day shift. And during day shift, there was a time period between 2 and 4 where we went skeleton crew. So there'd be 2 people inside to split essentially the fryer and grill duty at that point, because nobody ordered chicken between 2 and 4 generally. And then as you progress, eventually we could do prep and buns. So buns, preparing the buns, prep, obviously putting the toppings on the bun, bag, fold the sandwiches up, put them in the bag. We could do that ourselves eventually. So we went skeleton crew, and I don't know if that's where it was born, but we had a game called How Much Food Can You Eat While the one other person is outside taking an order. And we would try to mow cheese conies off. We would try to, cheese conies were probably the biggest one, or just hot dogs with ketchup. So when a car hop, somebody who goes out, takes an order and comes in, when they exit the door, you have between 45 seconds and probably 3 minutes. And I know that's a wide span, but it depends. Somebody could, she could walk out there and they could say, I'm here for a pickup, and walks right back in, right? Which is detrimental to our game. But if you go out there, you take a full order, and maybe they're new or they don't know the menu, then you have 3 minutes and you can just mount out a coney. I remember a guy there named Aaron, and then of course Mitch later. We would do this, and it was just hilarious. More hilarious than anything. Like, looking back, we were horrible employees because we were eating all the food. But also on busy nights, somebody would order a 6-piece nugget, and we'd put down 7 nuggets. Or mistakes happen in the restaurant industry, and you got to eat the mistake food. So you burn cheese sticks, but 3 of them are okay, but 2 of them exploded. Well, you can't serve 3 or 2 exploded ones, so you get to eat those 3. So corn dog nuggets, people would order 5 of them. We'd throw down 6, throw down an extra one, and then have it for yourself. So we'd have our little trays on the top, and that's how we would eat throughout the night. We wouldn't be able to sit down and eat. So maybe there was some of that going on. It probably wasn't great business-wise, but there was an ice cream machine. You can make your own shakes. I mean, the cool thing is we got to try everything. They would send samples. We got to try it all. Any kind of ice cream topping you could think of, we got to try it. You can create your own stuff. That's the cool thing about working at a restaurant. You get to create your own surprises, create your own creations of food. And there was plenty of that. We baked cookies on the grill once. We would make eggs on some Saturday, Sunday mornings. It was just so much fun. Another quick story, as we worked there, is when the Coke and Mentos became a sensation. And we went out to the back. We walked across the street to CVS, bought a bunch of 2 liters, bought a bunch of Mentos. And on a busy Friday night, we were out there doing Coke and Mentos. And the manager there at the time, her son worked there. He was out there with us, so patient, and then told us we need to get our asses inside and cook some food because we were busy. But a lot of fun there, met a lot of cool people. I could go on with stories for days, but Craig's story, where I first met him, and when we started the podcast, he was immediately someone that I wanted to get on. So if you've never listened, Craig has been on 2 podcasts. The second ever, maybe the 3rd ever episode of The Best Podcast You've Never Heard featured Craig's story, talk a little bit about A&W probably, and about him going to Phoenix to watch the PGA Tour. Back then, we were semi-serious on the podcast, getting Q&A on him working in the professional world. We had no clue what we were doing. I'll get there, I promise. And then recently, late last year, I believe, he came on for us to discuss the Tiger King. No, it had been this year, Tiger King, and some movies. So check out those episodes if you know Craig, or if you don't know Craig, and just he's so funny. I learned so much from Craig. Not only work, he did teach me working there. We became really good friends. We hung out a lot outside of work, and I still love to see him. I get to see him for the first time in a long time this year. He was able to come to my house in March or April, right when he had just gotten back from Thailand, and came over right when COVID started. So met Craig there, a lot of fun stories, and just a great start to my career. So next time I'm going to go into the next step in my career, as I was getting through college, working my way through college, working at the restaurant when I could, taking classes on the other days. I commuted to college. We'll get into the whole college days next time. So that's where we will pick up next week. I do want to say before we go, I've been watching 2 TV shows. Now, some of you are like, I don't know what that even means. For me, that is a huge deal. I am a strictly movies guy, have been forever, and I'm watching 2 TV shows at the same time. They're both weekly shows actually on TV, so I only have to catch up with 1 show a week, which is tremendous. The 2 shows that I'm currently watching, maybe they're both on FX. I can't even really remember. I'm watching them on Hulu, but they might be televised on FX. I know one of them is. One of them is A Teacher, which is, I think, popular. Maybe you've heard of it. Drop in the comments, tell me if you have. A Teacher, which is about a teacher having a romantic relationship with one of her students, and not necessarily glorifying it, but talking about the severe consequences of it. So I'm five episodes in. The 6th one will air tomorrow, December 1st. And it's really good. I'm really hooked. It's 25 minutes, maybe 22 minutes per episode, which is great for me. I'm loving it. And also Big Sky. So a friend of mine, Alan, turned me on to Big Sky, and I'm watching that. And I watched the first episode and audibly yelled at the end, and then immediately texted him and said, if something happens to these girls, I'm never going to forgive you for making me watch this. If you watch the trailer, you know it's about kidnapping, but incredibly good. Both of them really good. This one, I don't know if it's 8, 10 episodes, 45 minutes. Still not horrible, but one at a time. And only 2 episodes have been out. I'm almost through the second one. I have, again, a new one will come out tomorrow. Maybe not till Wednesday. I can't remember. But watching them both, watching 2 shows right now. So A Teacher and Big Sky. If you've watched them, drop down in the comments. Tell me what you thought. If you haven't watched them but want to, please do. They're both, I would recommend both of them. So hold off on my review for them right now, just in case people do start to watch them or haven't seen them yet. But I will give full reviews, and every week as I'm talking about this other stuff, I'm going to give you some movie reviews. So look forward to that next time. This week was about the 2 shows. So both incredibly good, and I'm really excited to see where they're going. So thanks for listening. This has been fun. It's going to get really fun talking as we progress through this, and when we really start to get into the podcast and some of the other things that we've been doing. So thanks for listening. As always, subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's actually a football game or 2 that we just played, we being some other friends of mine, but I threw it on the Opinions Anonymous YouTube channel. You can watch that if you want, if you're really digging some football. But watch Andy, Kyle, other Luke, and myself on YouTube. We do a lot of fun things. We've had some good podcasts. Check out our podcasts. We're getting them all transitioned to audio, so check them out on iTunes. Please give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. It means a lot. Leave us a review. It means a ton. We love it. And until next time, I can't wait. I hope you're just as excited. So be sure to tune in. Thank you for listening. Bye.